We have come a long way in our effort to establish the Satanic Leaf-tailed Gecko in captivity. The prime measure of success is the consistent availability of captive hatched individuals for the reptile community. This is the result of years of hard work by breeders to determine the husbandry conditions necessary to maintain multiple individuals at a level where they will produce eggs. And most of the husbandry information available is from this perspective. But production conditions require certain compromises that you are not constrained by. The husbandry presented in this care guide is specifically created for the keeper of one or a few geckos and do not have the constraints of space and time that a breeder does. This is the ideal husbandry for your fant. Note that some of this will contradict the typical breeder husbandry in the community. So, how do we reconcile breeder care and keeper care? I explain it this way. Animals can live in various levels of conditions. Humans, for example, can live good lives in a dirt floor hut, a small home in a rural area, a high-rise apartment, or in a beachside mansion. So too, geckos can live in a variety of acceptable conditions. Geckos are living beings that experience contentment, excitement, and stress. And we have the responsibility to develop our husbandry to provide them with the best life, not the minimum that they can physically survive. The care I present here is keeper-level care. Yes, you will be able to give them less than the best, and by all appearances, they are going to do just fine. But why are you doing this, if not to give your geckos the best life possible? We are entering into the enrichment phase of herpetoculture. I fully embrace this milestone. I encourage you to not settle for less for your geckos. Cage size. Fant husbandry starts with their enclosure. Typical enclosures are glass or PVC to retain humidity. If you live in a place with a cool, wet atmosphere, then you could consider a screen cage. But the majority of us will require solid sides to give us the required humidity. I recommend at least a 24 by 18 by 36 inch tall enclosure for a single fant. In the past, I listed a minimum size recommendation of 12 by 12 by 18 inches. And yes, you can keep them long-term in this size cage, but when you see them bounce around at night, you will realize that they can certainly use more space. As our job to provide the best life possible for our geckos, I am doing away with stating minimum sizes for survival and sharing my recommendations for their best life. Cohabitation. Fants have low interspecies aggression, at least as far as physical violence, and so they are often kept as pairs or even trios. This is the way I started my breeding project, but over the years and the hundreds of fants I have worked with, I noticed the different growth rates, the subtle competition, and occasionally the physical violence that comes with cohabitation. These negative aspects disappeared with the ones I raised and kept individually. I have noticed a consistent increase in quality of life with individually raised fants, and so, for the last 5 years, every fant has been kept individually from hatching. The only exceptions are during mating or rarely during photo sessions. Although cohabitation has traditionally been a practice for fant keepers and breeders, I cannot recommend it. As herpetoculturists, it is our job to remove as much stress from their lives as possible, and cohabitation is a benefit only for us breeders to keep more fants in the same amount of space. I know of no benefit that they derive from cohabitation until we determine that there is some benefit that outweighs the downsides. If you have reason for having more than one fant, keep them individually. Branches. The inside of your enclosure needs to have a network of thin perching branches. Your fant will jump around these branches at night and drape themselves over them to sleep during the day. Have a network of branches that will give them access to the full cage area. Plants. Plants help with humidity and the general ambiance of the enclosure. They are also used by the fants to provide security and cover. You can use plants that grow up or mount hanging plants on the sides of the cage. Fants will use the leaves to drink from, hide behind, or sleep in. Plants like Schefflera arboricola, the umbrella plant, or Ficus benjamina, the weeping fig, are examples of ideal plants. Substrate. Whether bioactive or simply naturalistic, A substrate is a great way to provide humidity. I have used everything from moist paper towel for quarantine situations to full bioactive with leaf litter and isopods. Each method has its use and advantages. For a keeper, I recommend the naturalistic approach, which is a soil floor with plants planted in the soil and leaf litter on top. You do not have to worry about isopods or other cleanup crew just yet, though they are not much additional effort to add if you like. If you want a more simple approach, then a few potted plants on the bare floor of the cage will provide humidity pockets. The downside of this is that the pots on the cage bottom provide a perfect place for escaped crickets to hide. Drainage. The most important aspect of the bottom of the cage is actually below the substrate. Where does all the water go? The ideal situation is an external drain so you don't have to worry about your cage turning into a swamp. You can create a drainage layer of leca clay balls, a soil barrier, and a substrate. But this requires you to make sure you don't overflow the drainage layer. If you are using an enclosure with a glass bottom that can't be drilled for a drain, you can install a vertical drain pipe that can be accessed and allows you to suck out the water with a wet-dry vacuum. I have white light LED bars for plant growth, but beware of the light bars heating up the enclosure. You may need to raise them up to give an inch of airspace ventilation between the enclosure top and the light. I have experimented with and without a UVB light. When I have used a UVB light, I have had success with UV Index 1 at the top of the enclosure. I have also relied on supplementation for vitamin D3, and both have worked well for me. Uroplatus are sensitive to UVB and can get burns from it, so use with caution. Yes, they perch in the wild where they are exposed to sunlight, but sunlight in the wild moves across the sky, giving them dappled exposure even though they are sleeping. Your UVB light stays on them at the same spot all day. I continue to experiment with different balances between UVB and supplementation. Currently, I recommend UVB and supplementation with Repashy Calcium Plus, Low D, twice a week. Hydration. Fans enjoy high humidity. A naturalistic enclosure facilitates this with plant life and substrate as a humidity source. But the high level of humidity also requires some thought as to where the water comes from and where it goes. My main hydration source is a misting once or twice a day, depending on the ambient humidity in my environment. This can be a hand mister if you work from home and never intend to go away for the weekend, or else this can be an automatic mister, which I highly recommend. I have also used a fogger, which is more effective than a mister in providing humidity with less water being put into the enclosure. Our hydration methods are not perfect, so we have to adjust them. Fans will not appreciate the sudden blast of mist when the mister turns on, and a billowing cloud from the fogger may concern them, as neither of these conditions are recognized as natural. I point my mister towards the plant and keep my fogger on the low setting and have it go on a couple of minutes every half hour throughout the night. You can also dissipate the cloud by having it go into a plant. Adjust your hydration to match your needs and observe what is going on inside your enclosure. Timers are wonderful tools for us, but they can be a problem if you then stop paying attention. Generally speaking, I mist in the evening before they all start to wake up. I want the humidity to be at the level where there are still water droplets on the leaves 4 hours later. If they evaporate before that, then I consider using the fogger set to run on low setting 5 minutes every half hour. Watch for the poop and make sure it's moist when it is deposited. That is a good sign that your hydration is working. Feeding. Your fans will eat during the night. I use deli cups as feeder bowls and feed every other day, with 2 of those feedings being lightly dusted with Repashy Calcium Plus, Low D. They will also get used to using feeder run cups like the ones made for chameleons. They seem to greatly enjoy crickets and aren't that interested in other feeders. But I keep trying to see if their tastes change and recommend that you try the variety of feeder insects available to you to see what your fan prefers. In conclusion, fans are incredible vivarium subjects, though keep in mind that every fan is an individual. I have some fans that love to drape themselves out in the open all day, and some fans that want to hide in their plant all day. One I see every day, the other I almost never see. This is part of keeping fans. You provide for them to decide what they want, and you enjoy what they are. even if that isn't exactly what you had in mind. Keeping fans has been an incredibly enriching experience for me. I encourage you to enjoy keeping them and resist breeding them for a while. Breeding takes a different mindset. Don't rush through the stage where life is simple and you are just enjoying watching your fant's natural behaviors. And if you decide you want to expand your fant family, then use everything you have learned to create another full-size fant enclosure. Stop expanding when you start thinking about using a smaller cage to fit more geckos in the space you have. That is our warning that we are leaving the stage of enrichment and heading into the collection mentality. Your greatest joy and satisfaction will be to stay in the stage where every gecko under your care is getting the finest treatment. With excellent care, they can be with you for over 10 years. I hope you enjoy your branch demons as much as I do. If you'd like a free, comprehensive care guide download, the link is in the description. My name is Yvette from Misty Mountain Fans. Have a fanty day.